This time, we are shining the spotlight on visionaries, innovators, and game changers who are redefining HR excellence. From strategic masterminds to diversity champions, we've covered it all. And speaking about influential leaders, let me introduce you to Elizabeth Gonzalez, founder and CEO of Specialty HR Consulting, a powerhouse in the realm of HR. With a career spanning over a decade, Elizabeth has not only mastered the art of orchestrating multifaceted projects, but has also nurtured high performing teams like nobody's business. So let's talk with Elizabeth and understand how she's creating this widespread impact. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, all right, Elizabeth. So I would like to pick your brain about your journey in the HR industry and how did you find your path into the industry?
So I started very, very young. I was still in college, early 20s. I was given the opportunity to kind of get into the HR field. I started to like the HR aspect of the operations in a business. And I was given the opportunity to work for a hedge fund at the time, which had almost about, I would say about 2,000 employees. So they were a medium-sized business. And it was the best sandbox to kind of experience and learn in HR. Why? Because the HR department had department heads for each realm in HR. So we had employee relations, we had talent management, we had training and development, recruiting, and it was fascinating to me. And I was given the opportunity to kind of get trained in each of these areas, which kind of made me an overall generalist. So that kind of set the stage for my future. This was almost 9 years ago, and 9 years later, I still, the seeds I planted back then, I'm reaping them now. I still have a lot of connections in from when I started my career. And from there, I've grown in different industries. I've had the opportunity to work in the tech world. I've had the opportunity to work in the blue collar industry, and just kind of diversify my experience so that I can just be a better asset to all of my clients. And a couple of years ago, I was presented the opportunity to go on my own, and I did. And ever since then, I've had my own business, and I've had the opportunity to help new, small, medium-sized businesses, even global companies, really get their HR straight. So it's been a journey, but one that I love.
Right. So because you've already worked in different industries, you know that aligning HR strategies with broader organizational goals is very crucial. So how do you make sure that HR initiatives not only match up, but also contribute to the company's bottom line?
Of course. So this was a decision I made early on in my career when I was younger. I understood the HR aspect. I thought it was so valuable that I understand the business aspect. So I actually went on and got my master's in business administration, which gave me that general knowledge of how an enterprise works, the financial aspect of it, the accounting, the operational side, and it really helped kind of get that understanding. And I felt like it really set the stage on who I would be as an HR leader. So now when I'm working with clients, I'm not only focused on people and HR, I'm focused on, okay, what are the goals? What's the vision of the organization? How can I align our HR initiatives with that vision,
Mhm.
right? Because every company is at a different stage. A startup organization is probably not as enthusiastic about focusing on employee engagement as it is as growing, right? So we have to kind of find that fine line and that fine tune to be able to make sure we're taking care of the organization, but the employees, making sure we're taking care of the employees, but as well finding the balance with the organizational needs.
Because you mentioned taking care of the employees. Nowadays, speaking about DEI, it has also become a very crucial aspect of the HR industry. And over the past few years, many organizations have taken strides to build their DEI policies and also change their hiring practices altogether. So, can you tell me about how you've championed inclusivity and led DEI initiatives in your previous roles and currently also? How are you taking DI into consideration?
Of course. So particularly one of the most recent ones I've done is with a global client that I have. And they wanted to launch a DEI program, not only in the US, which was my region, but globally as well. So one of the first things that I did was I needed to kind of educate the world, the global employees on that DEI. What does it mean? Unconscious bias, kind of educate them on all these terms and kind of make them self-conscious. So I created a training for the global team. And it's a required training that everyone has to take. And it goes over all of these terms, how it impacts you, making sure that they're conscious about the cultural differences, how to navigate through those cultural differences. And that was phase one. Phase two is kind of going in now, bringing in additional training and more of how do I break down those silos between each of the countries, each of the regions, so that we can collaborate as one team. Because at the end of the day, we have one goal and we're working for the same organization. So we have to learn how to navigate through all of our differences to get to that goal. So it just really depends on the organization and where they're at. This particular organization hadn't done anything in the past, so we had to start from the very beginning with educating folks on all these different terms, how to navigate DEI, and then now we can start developing that program.
That's really interesting. As you rightly know, that recruitment strategies are also fast evolving. So we would like to know any stories about any game-changing recruitment tactic you implemented and how it has impacted maybe your organization or any other organization that you implemented it for.
Of course. So this is one of my favorite clients that I had. I went into this organization. They had about 50 employees. They had an HR director in place for over a year, and they were stagnant. They weren't growing. They were frustrated because they had over 300 clients they needed to service, but they couldn't grow the business. So I was hired on to kind of make. And what I loved about this particular client is that they trusted me. They said, "We're desperate. We're going to trust everything you said." So I was able to really put into motion the plans that I had. So I started reaching out to, I first did a market analysis. Okay, are we competitive in pay? Are we offering the benefits that we should be offering? Are we attracting the right talent? Once I had that data, I was able to kind of skew we were actually overpaying. They were actually overpaying their employees. So I had to kind of navigate, switch over their compensation, make it market value, add in benefits, and then from there, what I needed to work on was brand recognition, right? What's that employer proposition? And I started reaching out to local universities, really letting the students know who we were all throughout the areas that we needed these employees for. It was all of South Florida. And we started, it took just effort, going out there, showing who we were, showing them what we were capable of, and telling our story, who we were, how we were different from everybody else that was doing the same thing we were doing. And within a year, their headcount grew by 215%. And by the second year, which is when COVID hit, we still were able to grow. I believe it was 100, like more than a little over 100% from the previous year as well. So by the time I left the organization, I believe we were up to about 450 employees within a couple of years of implementing the recruitment strategies.
That's really interesting. So we rightly believe that you're hands-on with tech rollouts like ServiceNow and HRIS. So how do you handle integrating new technologies into HR smoothly? And are there any factors you always keep in mind for a seamless transition?
Of course. So there isn't one platform that's cookie cutter and fits all industries. Every platform has its pros and its cons, and you really have to understand each of the industries that you're working with and seeing which platforms are inclusive to that industry. So now that I have a better understanding, since I have this experience of working with all these different industries and all these different platforms, I can make these recommendations. Now, when it comes to implementation, one of the things that I think is key in making it a smooth transition is I am a hands-on person. So I make sure that I get integrated into the business and I have access to the data that I need to be able to do the implementation. So once I've gone over, I've presented 3 different options to the owners, the CEOs, or the decision makers. They select a platform. We get all the contract done. Then I get to work. I need to collect the employee data. I need to collect if we're going to be implementing benefits, do the benefits planning for it, the implementation. When is it going to start? When is it going to end? The communication piece, which is so important. You can't just do an implementation without letting the employees know what's happening. So as long as you continue that constant line of communication as you're implementing, it makes it a bit smoother because the employees know what's required of them. Because sometimes they need to submit forms, W-4 for tax purposes, I-9s if need be, etc. So it's just a matter of, I think the biggest thing is just transparency and communication.
Hmm. True, true, true. And because we are on implementation, I would like to ask you about implementing new policies. And how do you get everyone on board while keeping disruption minimal?
So when we're implementing new policies, it really truly depends on the direction the organization wants to go, right? So first, it's understanding where are you lacking, what's your vision, where are you headed, and where are your pitfalls? Where do you feel that you're struggling? Once we've determined that, then we can go over and say, okay, we need X, Y, Z policy. Once I've built the policy based on the needs of the organization, again, it's all about communication. Once it's been approved, it's making sure that all of the employees are aware of this new policy, making sure that they understand it, and if they have any questions, being available to answer any of those questions. It's just a matter of being on top of it, making sure that people review it, they signed it, they understand it, and you move on to the next.
Right, right, right. So we here at Impact have noticed that you've been a great collaborator across departments while we were researching about you. So can you tell me about a time you worked with different teams to achieve a big HR goal together?
Okay. Let's see. I would say, okay, so one of the clients that I worked with, I'm going to go back to the recruitment one that we were able to do that. That took a lot of effort, not only from an HR perspective, but from a departmental perspective as well. I needed the collaboration and the buy-in from the different departments and department heads to make it happen. Because, for example, as we were hiring these professionals, I wanted to make sure that from a clinical perspective, because this was a mental health, a behavioral health organization, that they understood and they did speak the lingo. I had a background in psychology, so I could have these conversations at the front end, but I really loved having someone, for example, from clinical present so that they can continue on that conversation, right? Because we want to make sure that these employees that we were trying to hire also understood that we knew what we were talking about. So I was able to get the buy-in, collaborate with them, have them included in it. And they knew that this wasn't only an HR initiative, it was a clinical, billing, accounting department. Everyone came in and stepped in when it was needed to make sure that the project was successful. Again, clear communication and setting the standard. They understood that this not only impacted me and the HR department, but it impacted them as employees of the organization as well.
Right, right, right. The intersection between psychology and HR, I truly believe just scales. So again, we know that HR industry is fast evolving, and keeping up with HR trends must be a challenge. So how do you stay on top of things, and how do you encourage your team to keep learning?
Of course. I'm a learner. I took my all the assessments I've ever taken. Learner is number one. It's in my nature. So I always make it a priority to attend conferences. I attend Florida HR conference. I attend the SHRM general conference as well. And then, of course, I want to make sure that I attend recent webinars. I'm always looking at the SHRM website. I think that's one of my number one resources since I am SHRM certified. And I like to go on there and see what's the latest, what are the latest trends, what are the most recent webinars, what are they talking about, what's hot right now. And that's what helps me stay active in front of the industry. Like right now, AI is a huge thing, not only in HR, but across all industries and all departments. So it's just a matter of making sure that you're at the forefront of change and making sure that you're educated. And I influence my team to do the same. I want them to go. So our organization pays for them to go to these conferences as well. If they need to get certified, the organization also pays for them to get certified, because I believe that education is knowledge is key. You know, if you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the skills. So I do believe that it's very important.
True, true, true. I truly agree that knowledge is the key and is the foundation of everything that we do. So we have to keep learning and evolving. All right, we're almost reaching the last couple of questions, and we would like to know what you see as the biggest challenge for HR leaders in 2024, and how do you plan to tackle some of the challenges or any one of the challenges that you would like to talk about?
Of course. I think the biggest challenge that any HR leader can attest to is getting buy-in from organizations. I walk into a lot of organizations that their HR function is led by someone in finance. Always someone in finance. Don't know why. And finance people don't tend to be people. So it's very interesting. So it's very interesting. I think that's one of the biggest challenges, is kind of switching the scripts and having them understand that while we're not revenue generating, we can make an impact to the bottom line. Like I did with that behavioral health company where they were stagnant. Had I not come in and implemented the plan that I did, they wouldn't have grown within the 2 years the way they did. They became a multi-million-dollar company once I opened those the floodgates. So I think it's getting these leaders to understand that while we're not a revenue generating department, we're just as important to make an impact on their organization.
Right, right, right. I think with companies, it's more over the end goal is until and unless you see the monetary benefits. But I think investing in people is something that scales more, and the ROI is not really defined. So that's a really important thing that you've mentioned. So lastly, what advice would you offer to HR leaders who want to make a big impact? Any wisdom you have gathered all along the way?
I think that what's made me most successful is a lot of people want to go in and show their knowledge, and they want to go into a room and show the CEO or the decision makers that they know what they're talking about. And I think that that turns off the decision makers, because they're already hesitant on bringing in the talent anyways to begin with. So one of the tactics that's worked really well for me is being the listener, just sitting and listening and absorbing and observing everything. Why? Because once you get to know who you're working with, you know how to navigate the conversations. There are leaders that you can be completely transparent and upfront and say, this is what we need to do, and they'll accept it. And there are leaders that you'll learn that you need to kind of go around, tell them a story, then go back and tell them, and then tell them, and kind of lead them into the decision that needs to be made, right? So I think that if you go in first and you listen, you'll be able to make that determination, and it'll make you a lot more successful when dealing with different leaders.
All right. That's I think something that I also needed to hear. So all right, Elizabeth. I am grateful for this opportunity to feature you as a trailblazer in the HR landscape, and I'm confident that your story will serve as a beacon of inspiration for many HR leaders all over the globe. So thank you once again for sharing your time, wisdom, and passion with us. I look forward to seeing the positive ripple effect, which is going to continue and unfold in the HR community and beyond. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.